Then you also have a second from left, Mr. John Masuku. Mr. John Masuku is a very experienced, a veteran journalist. He has been in the industry for more than 40 years. And is one of the most experienced that we have in this country, in the media. And we are happy because he is going to share with us, focusing on the role of the media in electoral processes. And Mr. John Masuku is the director of VOP, and he has been there for some time. And that experience is going to benefit us tonight. We also have on the way Koliwe Majama. Koliwe Majama is another experienced and a very enthusiastic media personnel. She has been with community media, with community radio, the first community radio in Zimbabwe, Radio Dialogue in Bulawayo for some time, before she moved to Mr. Zimbabwe, where she was focusing on ICT and broadcasting and gender issues. Now she's a consultant, and she's going to be joining us in a few minutes, so that we have a complete panel. We also have Comrade Nonlozi, again with Amnesty International. Nonlozi Ndlovu. Nonlozi is going to give us the opening remarks and a background, so that we understand where exactly this activity is coming from, and where is it located in terms of the work that you are doing together with Amnesty International. Without wasting time, I want to call upon Nonlozi Ndlovu to just give us a background and some opening remarks. Nonlozi.
Thank you so much. Can we clap hands for Comrades Kwangwari? You know, when you want to speak and people are not clapping hands, you then doubt if whatever you're going to say does make sense or not. But anyway, thank you so much, Comrade Kudzai, for the introductions and the remarks that you have just made. As Kudzai have said, I'm from Amnesty International Zimbabwe. And Amnesty International Zimbabwe, as you all know, is a human rights organization that deals with the rights of everyone. I'm saying Kudzai is mischievous. I think he wants to carry out a coup.
Sorry, I forgot my junior here. We are together at Youth Agenda Trust. I'm the board chairperson and he's my secretary. So it's very easy for me to take him for granted. But I want to introduce Mr. Simbarashi Moyo. Sorry, I had forgotten you. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anyone here. But that Simbarashi Moyo is with CRA, Combined Harare Residents Association. He's the chairperson, but he's also the vice president of Zimbabwe Union of Residents and Ratepayers Union Associations, Zura. So I've got a very important person. I was joking, I'm a resident, please. I'm a boss. So we want to appreciate you and recognize you. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you so much, Kudzi. Thank you, Simba. Thank you, everyone. So the background of the relationship that we have at the moment, we are working with the Zimbabwe Association of Community Radio Stations, which is ZACRAS. As Amnesty, like I stated, we are a human rights organization where we work around the issues of human rights, the right to life being one of the issues that we work on. We also have, we work on the right to housing, which is why we also work on around issues of forced evictions. We also work on freedom of expression, which is the project that we are currently working on with ZACRAS, where we are working in collaboration with our partners, Unity, around the issues of community radio stations, and we are currently working on a project on advocating for the licensing of community radio stations. But on the background of that project, our main aim or our main objective is to see to it that there is access to information in this country, and for that to happen, we cannot only advocate for an environment where we say the traditional or the mainstream media actually broadcast or publishes information information that is crucial for everyone. But we have said to ourselves, we have to look at the role of that community radio plays in as far as providing information to communities. So we are currently working with 10 community radio stations where we are saying we want to capacitate them. We want to build that capacity for them so that by the time government, we don't know when that day will come, when government will actually license these community radio stations. There are 10 of them across the country where we want to capacitate them around issues of community broadcasting and community media. And as we all know, Zakras has been in this business. So as part of this project, we are celebrating this year's celebration of the World Press Freedom Day, where we are saying for the communities to speak, they have to be freedom of expression, and these communities must be allowed to say what they want, just as we are advocating for that. Just as we've been having the celebrations throughout the country. We had the celebrations at Harare Polytechnic yesterday, where we were all commemorating World Press Freedom Day. So as part of those celebrations, we are saying today, we have initiated this discussion where we really want to discuss the role that the community media plays in our society, and specifically in this context we want to look at the role that community media will play in the run-up to the elections. As we all know that we are gathering momentum towards the elections. I understand that some have launched their manifestos today, others will be having their primary elections in the next coming days, but we are saying community radio plays a crucial role, just like any media, in giving people access to information, in actually allowing people to have conversations around the elections. So all our panelists, as we see them, they're going to give us their side of the story. John Masu coming in from a perspective of someone who has been in the media for quite some time. We understand that he has been in broadcasting for over 42 years. That's quite a good some good experience, having been with the public broadcaster for 28 years. Then we have Rose Muzerengi. She's the campaigns coordinator for Amnesty International, and she will give us the human rights perspective to these community radio stations. We also have Simba, where these are the residents, and they know well what the residents want communicated through these platforms, the community media that we have. As we all know that at the moment, most of them are not yet licensed. They are initiatives. Let us clap hands for Koliwe as she comes in. You know, I was saying to myself, Koliwe is late. That was not Koliwe's character when we were Mr. Zimbabwe. So I think she's now a politician. Probably she will announce that she's standing in Harare East or Harare West, where everyone wants to run. So welcome Koliwe Majama, who's now a media consultant, formerly with Mr. Zimbabwe. So I was saying Simba is coming from the perspectives of the residents. What do the residents want to hear from this community media, and how can they shape the discourses around the community media and the information that will be broadcast or that will be published by these community media platforms. Then Koliwe is coming in. She has been with Mr. Zimbabwe for almost over 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. She has also been with Radio Dialogue, the first community radio station in the country. She will also give her view on community media, and also focusing specifically on how these established formal community media can play a role in countering fake news. You know that this is era of fake news. You know, as I was coming here, I was just receiving some communication that the vice president had died, and I was saying to myself, who has confirmed that? And I was listening to the president saying that no, he is still critically ill. So you find that there is a lot of fake news that is coming in, and Koliwe will give us his perspective on that. And for now, I will leave the time to Kudzai, who's going to facilitate this discussion, and I hope we are going to engage and also give our own recommendations on how we think community media can work in the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mlondolos. And Koliwe, welcome.
Thank you.
And we are happy that you are now here, because we are worried that if Koliwe is not here, what's going to happen now? The panel is not complete. So thank you very much. So to start our discussion, I'm going to invite Mr. John Masuku, who's going to discuss the role of media in electoral processes, particularly when we're focusing on community media, community broadcasting, or community media basically. We just want to hear from him what is the role that community radio can play in terms of electoral processes, in terms of facilitating access to information and freedom of expression to citizens, so that citizens can participate based on information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kudzai. And also thank you for inviting me. I think what is important from the topic that I've been given, which is the role of community media in the electoral process, is to unpack that topic so that we are together. As Kudzai said in his introduction, that yes, we may have a number of people from the media, but others are from outside and others are watching us on social media. So it's important that we understand what we mean by community media. But first of all, what is community? I think it has been described in various forms. You had reference that the first community radio station was Radio Dialogue as an initiative. And there are many others that Mlondolozi mentioned, 10 of them that you are working with Zakras on. But I know there are more than 10 initiatives. And these are still initiatives. They have not yet been registered. But we're not talking about community radios alone. They are part of what we call community media. So a community, by definition, just what I got from the dictionary and the internet, is a small or large social unit that has got similar norms, religion, values, and identity. And Zakras, which we have been making reference to here as being the mother body of all those community radio stations, has also defined a community. And I'm going to share with you what Zakras says about a community. I know that this is still under discussion as they lobby for the licensing of community stations, and the authorities at one time have said, no, you guys are not communities per se, you're just individuals, perambulating as communities. But Zakras says the term community refers to a collective or a group of people sharing common characters and or interests. The term community can either be defined as a geographically based group or persons or social group or sector of the public who have common or specific interests. So it's much narrower than the public, the general public. So that's why you have these communities in Gweru, Nkabazwe, you have got them in Kwekwe, just in Kwekwe, Kwelas, you have got them in Nkai FM, you have got them, I think now they're all over the country in Binga. These are small communities who now have started their community media, particularly advocating for the licensing of community radio station. That's community, as defined by Zakras as well as other definitions. Then we also have to understand media itself. And I've already said in the introduction that here we're talking about various forms of media, because we're now accessing information through various forms. A long time ago, we would only read newspapers, and mainly public-owned or state-owned newspapers, public-owned or state-owned radios and televisions. But right now, you can access information in many ways. And this is what we are encouraging different communities to do, so that they don't only wait for the public media, because they can make some of these other media very effective, and it can reach them with lots of information. For instance, right now, we are passing on this information that we're discussing here in various parts of the country and various parts of the world. So media would include broadcasting stations, newspapers, radio, television, even billboards, the ones that you find in communities that Kudzai Kwangari is standing as an MP in this area, or Koliwe Machama is standing as a councillor in some part of Bulawayo, and so forth. That is media on its own, because it's telling you what is happening, it's telling you who is who in your community. Reference was made to a party that launched its manifesto today. And I can tell you there were delegates from many communities there. And it is important for them to go back to their communities and unpack some of those things that were discussed at the launch of the manifesto. This was live on public media, on radio and television. But a person in Mzarabani wants to know how that manifesto affects them. A person in Cholocho wants to know how it affects them. So this is why it is important then to have communities who can focus on what is relevant, on what is important in their own communities. So that's why I was saying this is beyond radio, TV, and so forth. Fine, we may say Sly TV are covering us, they are TV, but they're part of social media, and everyone can access social media, everyone can access what's going on. I've even noticed that even the public media, when they are broadcasting their news, when they are broadcasting their programs, they are even going on social media because they know many people are there. So we should know those strengths so that we use media effectively and so that we can access or send information effectively. So resultantly, community media then is any form of media that is created and controlled by a community, either a geographic community or community of identity and interest. Community media is separate, as I said, from commercial, public, and state-controlled. And why community media? How can it help us? I've alluded to the fact that it can narrow down the information, because on public media, a region or a province can be mentioned only once in a while. Whereas when you are in your own community, your community media, be it a WhatsApp group, be it a Facebook group, be it whatever form that you have, you can focus on issues that affect you in your community. So it can give you that watchdog role, in an election, so that you get to know what is going on, so that you can report about the anomalies that are going on in election. It can also provide voter education so that you know what is going on. We now have the biometric system. Many people out there, they don't know what all that is about. So as a community, as a small media, accessing that information from your community, you are able to explain well than just depending on the larger media, on the public media. And you can explain that in your own language, and it can be explained by you, some of your volunteers, because community media is usually, or in most cases, is run by people from the community. If you find media that calls itself community media and it's run by individuals outside that community, then that is not the best description of a community media. It is not a community media at all. This is why there's a lot of controversy surrounding some stations that are licensed or that are given licenses in the name of community radio stations, when actually they belong to a larger group which is in the public domain, like a public broadcast and so forth, because the editorial policies will remain the same, the personalities will remain the same, and also the people broadcasting there may just be employed, but they are not employed by the community. They are employed by an organization. So which is why Zachras has been advocating that communities that are formed should actually run and own their stations, and do things their way. If they are in a fishing community, they know the kind of content that they want to put across. If they are in a timber community, they know what content to put across. So coming back to elections, I've mentioned the watchdog role, the voter education. So many things need to be known by our communities as far as the election is concerned, because most of them don't access national or public media. So it is important to narrow down some of that community so that they know where the polling stations are going to be. They know what they should carry when they are going to polling stations. They should know the do's and don'ts of voting, what makes them disqualified, and so forth. So it will be much easier if they are doing that from their communities. And also, like I said earlier on, to report some of the anomalies, because on their radio station, on their WhatsApp group, on their Facebook page, on their Twitter, they would also have been able to learn a lot about civic education, the do's and don'ts, of governance and so forth. So those are the things that the watchdog role will be performing to make sure that everything goes according to rule. And then the other thing that is synonymous with election is peace. So community media can also promote peace and tranquility. Where there are problems, where people are fighting, community media will report about that things are not going on well in that ward or in that constituency, so that the authorities know that there is disorder in a constituency or in a ward, and they bring normalcy in that area. So peace building is also very important. And community media will also be working with different civil society groups in order to promote some of these things that I've mentioned, as we're going to hear from my colleagues. That is the watchdog role, the voter education, and civil education in general, as well as peace building. I think for starters, Kudzi, I thought I should give that general, broad preamble as to community media, what it is in general terms, and also its role in elections, what it can do for the citizens and who participates in it. I think with that we'll be able to formulate a discussion from here, from that kind of background. Thank you very much, Kodzi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masuku. He touched on a number of issues. He underscored the need to understand the definition of community radio, to say what it is, beginning with community itself. What are we referring to when we're saying community? He also talked about the role of community radio or community media basically in elections, where he highlighted the fact that community radio or community media must play a role of demystifying issues that are discussed or that are communicated by public media at national level, and demystify and simplify and make sense of those issues at a local level, so that people are able to decide based on that information. He also talked about the watchdog role that community media can play, and he talked about the advantages of community media. Mentioned the fact that community media can highlight election irregularities if they happen, even at local level. Community radio can highlight such issues. He talked about peace promotion as one of the roles that community media can play in terms of building peace and making sure that it creates platforms where citizens can interact and resolve their conflict, if any. And finally, he talked about the fact that community radio can work with civil society organizations. We know that most civil society organizations are issue-based. They've got an issue that they are talking about, that they are promoting. So community radio or community media can make sure that those issues are also highlighted and taken to the people. So thank you very much, Ms. Masuku. We also have, we are going to have Madam Koliwe to talk about community media and countering fake news before, during, and after elections. I think that's one of the challenges that we are suffering at the moment because of social media, the issue of fake news. Once someone starts sharing it, then it's like a veiled fire. It gets to everyone. But how do we verify? How do we make sure that the information that we are receiving, we can trust it, we can use it, we can make decisions based on that information? Koliwe, thank you.
Thank you, Kudai. And I realize you want to introduce my presentation with the fall of a giant. Thank you very much. I think I'm really excited about having this conversation tonight, because I think that there's a paradox around what community radio is, especially in this digital era. I think community radio, and I'm going to be very activistic in my presentation also, because I think when people talk about my background in community media activism, when I started working for Radio Dialogue, it was like serious guerrilla warfare, where we would go and try and cover an event, and Jonathan Moyo was there and he could pick us in a crowd. And the only way that we could broadcast was to stand in a roadshow at a shopping center and tell people that we need to demand citizen media. But here is the paradox. The citizen community and not be able to package that information so that it is distributed and to everybody else who coexists, like Ubabu Masugu says, in a geographical or interest group community. So, for instance, when you look at the demographic now, people who have registered for the elections, 60% of those are the youth. And 53% of them, including those who are youthful, are women. How are we packaging our content as community people? Whose voices are we echoing in that information? So Mr. Masugu speaks to issues around voter education, but here's the challenge for community media now. What does the election calendar look like? We still don't know the exact date that we will be going to vote. What is it that we are saying to the people as community media activists? And the information that we are distributing to them, has it been checked? So a few weeks ago, we had the launch of the ZimFact platform. I don't know how many of you are aware that now there's a platform that will be looking at issues or content you know, during the campaigning period that the politicians are going to be saying to us. A few weeks ago, Tendai Biti was on Twitter talking about the child and maternal mortality rates. And that was just a tweet which could have actually caught a wildfire in terms of, you know, the impact that it has on electoral campaigns. So even as we start talking about voter education, it's around the election calendar, it's around what people are saying and how it relates to the processes that are going to happen. But we already have challenges around the election date itself. When we talk about peace building, I think that this is a role that the community media should actually be playing, but we haven't seen much of it. In fact, what we are seeing is community media carrying the slur, quoting verbatim hate speech. And I think when I want to be very cautious in talking about hate speech, because I don't think even in the region, in the African region, and I'm glad Amnesty is here, to talk about the definitions of hate speech and the parameters that we as community media would be using or quoting or making reference to hate speech in terms of, you know, putting out these people as valid or, you know, reliable leaders that we can trust. Then in terms of the watchdog role, we need to be honest that we have a very hypersensitive and hyper-reactive audience. Let us remember that when we are covering and playing this watchdog role, the audiences have got mobile phones, and as soon as the election results are going to be posted, someone's got a shot of it before you even cover as the community media. So let us acknowledge that there are changing faces in the media that we are saying we represent as community media activists. The need for us to actually be able to transform or progress for more digital production. So community radio activists, I know, for instance, I'm seeing there was someone from Patsaka here. There's a lot of access to the internet now. And I think for those of you who follow Potra's reports, you are aware that most of the internet that is accessed in Zimbabwe is accessed via mobile. I receive more voice podcasts than I receive any other radio broadcast. And this is community voices. So as community media people, we need to also break that barrier to say, how am I as a community media activist or as a content producer or as a blogger, how am I feeding into the existing local commercial broadcasting services that are available to us? Do you have partnerships with them? Are you feeding in the citizens' voices that they are bound to omit because they are going to focus on the more mainstream sort of voices? Then there's also a need to improve standards, and I know this one is quite sensitive, but I think that when you look at some of the community media products that we have, whether it's a print media, a print newspaper, whether it's a community radio broadcast, there is something about your product that is not sexy at all. I am not going to share it because there is absolutely nothing sexy about it. There's nothing creative. There's nothing that recognizes that the people that you intend to serve are people who have a need for a more audience-centric. So if you listen to Magamba's Zambezi News, it's very exciting to listen to, and I'm not vouching for it or advertising it here, but obviously the content is more appealing, especially if you are going to be very audience-centric in the language that you use, and even if they are going to say goodbye by saying futsek. So then there's the issues around digital information, and this one, a few weeks ago, I wrote an article for those of you who follow my writing on koliwemajama.co.zw. I posed a question about whether it is fake news or a way to make news. Can we say that the information that was circulated before the official takeover of the ZBC by the military, that there was going to be a military coup in Zimbabwe, can we call that news that was received and distributed fake news? So I also am very cautious about using the term fake news, because it's really about disinformation, or maybe a slant that is there to probe, because we can't run away from the fact that there are gaps in terms of, the relevant or public officials giving out information timeously. So the fact that you as community media activists are on the ground and are able to collect those citizens' perspectives, the reality of the issue is that countering fake news is countering the citizen themselves and their demands for a certain, rapid response to breaking news, if it were, or as it were. So the challenges around fake news are really not about your ethics and your professionalism as the journalist. It's about the way you are able to respond to the demands of, a more hyperactive audience. And I think during election time in particular, it's important for you to be able to follow what the citizens are saying. So in my writing, I was talking about how social media should actually be a friend to the current day digital journalist. You can't afford to write an opinion based on what has been happening within the mainstream without looking at the way that the citizens are responding to an issue. And I'm going to close it by saying there was an interesting development around, there's an interesting conversation going on right now around the ethics and conduct of certain journalists in response, or as they are working or interviewing various politicians based on, the context that we are in now, which is election time. It's very important for journalists as well to recognize that the citizens themselves are watching you, and they are the ones that decide then ultimately whether you as community media activists or community media reporters are mere relics, or you remain relevant because you have an opportunity in this digital era to not only counter fake news, but make sure that that which you call fake news because of your training on ethical reporting, rights to response, balancing news, which doesn't exist when somebody out there picks up a cell phone and decides that this is what the audience or this is what the community wants to listen to. So thank you, Kudzai.
Good. Yes. Thank you very much, Koliwe, for that presentation. I think it's very useful in terms of enlightening, in terms of saying what exactly should do community radio or community media broadly do. And you talked about the history, your history in community radio, and giving us your guerrilla approach history when you were in Ulawa with Radio Dialogue. A very exciting history. And you talked about the fact that citizens need to participate in community media, the need for proper packaging of information so that citizens are able to consume and make use of that information easily, and also to pay attention to demographic needs. The fact that we've got about 60% of the youth, of the people that are registered to vote, and then also have got women. How exactly do we package that information so that it makes sense to those demographic groups? The need for correct information to be shared so that you can counter fake news. And she emphasized also the fact that community media must actually counter fake news so that people can have reliable information. And she ended by talking about improving the quality of products or news or information that comes from community media, so that it is more exciting. It is, she used the term sexy. Sexy, yes. So, thank you very much, colleague. Now we're going to have Roslyn. Roslina is with Amnesty International, and she's going to talk about community media and human rights. Roslyn.
Thank you so much, Kudzai. I'm not sure I'm going to make human rights sexy, but I'm just going to try and present the human rights perspective around community radios. But let me just start by giving you a background of who we are as Amnesty. Maybe some of you may not have had the chance to interact with Amnesty International. Amnesty International is a global movement of more than 7 million members campaigning for human rights. And we are campaigning for a world in which human rights are enjoyed by all. Our vision is to see that we've got quite an ambitious vision where we want to see everyone enjoying their rights in line with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. We are independent of any government, political ideology, religious interests, and we are funded mainly by our members. Some of you might wonder why Amnesty and the press. Maybe just to say that Amnesty International was born out of a press, right? You find that in 1961, 2 students were arrested, and you know, the story was in the newspapers in Portugal. And what then happened was Peter Benenson, the founder of Amnesty International, picked the story and wrote a story in a newspaper called The Observer, entitled "The Forgotten Prisoner." So the story was, you know, flighted in newspapers all over the world. And what happened was that Amnesty International was born out of that letter, and there was a huge campaign that, throughout the world, in which there was a campaign for the release of the forgotten prisoner. So the candle that we have symbolizes that Amnesty International would shine light in the darkest places where human rights abuses are unseen and unpunished. So we say, better light a candle than cast the darkness. Right, may I begin by quoting Thomas Jefferson's famous line, where it left, I quote, "Where it left for me to decide whether we should have a government with newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate to prefer the latter." Maybe in the same vein as Amnesty would say, where it left for Amnesty to decide whether we should have a government without community radios or radios without a government, Amnesty International would prefer the latter. So given this background, we're saying that we are campaigning, we are calling for the licensing of community radios in Zimbabwe. The legal framework allows us to do that, because the Constitution, Article 61 of the Constitution, allows for a 3-tier system, that is the commercial, the community, and the public services. And this is also backed by regional instruments, that is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights globally, and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, in the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression in Africa, and the rights contained in the African Charter. You find that this is also guided by the principles of allowing equitable allocation of frequencies between private broadcasting issues, both commercial and community, which is our emphasis. It calls for an independent regulatory body that shall be responsible for issuing license and ensure observance of license conditions, and that the licensing process shall be free and fair and promote diversity in broadcasting, that community broadcasting shall be promoted and given its potential to broaden access to airwaves by poor rural communities. But despite these domestic, regional, and global legal provisions, Zimbabwe has failed to license a single community radio, and we are very worried about that, because not only has the government failed to license community radios, but those that are campaigning for the licensing of these community radios, they are facing several human rights violations, among them not being able to freely assemble, arbitrary arrests, and several others. And I'm happy we have John Masuku here, who is a veterinary journalist. I think he has experienced being raided by police way back in 2001, 2002. And then we have the Quella's Community Radio Initiative. They were their offices raided, and their laptops seized. And then we have Radio Dialogue, where Koliwe is coming from. I'm sure she experienced that, where they were denied a license in 2005 by the Broadcasting Authority in Zimbabwe. And they were persistently targeted by the police when they were in Bulawayo. And in March 2013, their offices were raided, and 180 radio sets were confiscated. So what we are saying as Amnesty International, we are saying is that the right to freedom of expression remains restricted, mainly because the government is unwilling to open the airwaves and allow communities to own and control their own radio stations. The Zimbabwean government has also failed to implement positive obligations regarding to freedom of expression and the right to information by refusing to allow sufficient access to broadcasting licensing of community radios. And this somewhat lack of political will by the government, we can see the statements that were made at one time during a World Radio Day celebrations by Brigadier Enwe Mutambudzi on the 16th of February. MISA reported that he threatened to clamp down on community radio initiatives and accused them of being donor-funded and operating illegally. And then the Herald of 14 July 2017, George Sharamba, the Secretary of Information, Media and Broadcasting, said that Zimbabweans need to be rational in their push for community radio licensing, and he described as unwarranted the noise that is being made by some quarters like us to issue licenses to community radios. So the denial or failure to license community radio stations has been accompanied by a series of human rights violations, as I have highlighted, and this is despite the fact that Zimbabwe, the then Rhodesia, was the first to have radio broadcasting in Southern Africa. That is in 1933. And you find that our neighbors, South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, they've licensed their community radios, and Joburg alone has more than 40 community radios that are licensed. So as we mark World Press Freedom Day, Amnesty International is calling for action. We are calling for the government of Zimbabwe to give priority to community radio stations and see them as equally important tools in community and national development. We are calling for the Portfolio Committee on Information, Media and Broadcasting to exercise its oversight role and to ensure that mandates of the Broadcasting Authority are carried out effectively, and to investigate the reasons why no community radio has been licensed since the enactment of the Broadcasting Services Act, with the view of taking concrete measures that will result in the issuance of licenses in a fair and non-partisan manner. We are calling on the Broadcasting Authority to adopt an application process that is user-friendly, bearing in mind the technical limitations of community radio initiatives. We are also calling on the lowering of the fees to ease the financial burden of applicants for community broadcasting services. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was sexy. I think I liked it. Thank you very much, Roslina, for that presentation. You shared with us the history of Amnesty International. I think many of us benefited. I also did not know that history. It's been very useful to me. Thank you very much. And she also then shared why it's important for them to be involved in issues of freedom of expression, and the fact that they are concerned about the promotion and protection of human rights the world over. She highlighted both national and regional protocols and conventions that talk to issues of freedom of expression and broadcasting. And then she talked about the fact that there have been human rights violations in the fight for community broadcasting licensing in Zimbabwe. She cited a number of cases, including Kwekwe, Radio Dialogue in Ulayo, and even Mr. John Masuku here, and Koliwe also. I know she suffered that together with me. So, and then she talked about the fact that we needed to make sure that we continue to fight for the licensing of community radio stations. On Wednesday, I attended MISA organized activity at the Holiday Inn, and one of the speakers, in fact the speaker, was the special advisor to the president, Chris Muchangwa. And one of the things that he said when we asked him about any policy issues that are there in terms of media reform and on all that stuff, his response was that why should you want to be given things? You must fight to get it. And he cited the liberation struggle and said when they were not happy with the Smith, they organized and fought. And he went on to say when they were not happy with Robert Mugabe, they also organized and made sure that he's gone. So he also challenged us to make sure that we fight. And then later on, I talked to him after the function when we were not chatting outside. And I said, Pamtswangwa, mati imi muri government yedu imi tiri sutaka kuisai. Kana taka kuda zvatinoda kwamuri, tofana kugwana emere kuti muite zvatinoda. Akati, yanga irika meeting. Saka, thank you very much, comrades Rose, for that presentation. And now, lastly, we're going to have Mr. Moyo, who's going to share us and give us a perspective of the residents. I think when we're talking about media, the greatest and the most important stakeholder of the media is not necessarily the journalists, not even the media owners, but the consumer. And it is the residents. That's where the community comes from. Mr. Moyo, can you share with us on the aspect of community media and community engagement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, facilitator. Yes, for giving us this opportunity and platform as residents to share our perspectives. I want to start by swearing that I will tell the truth. I will tell nothing and nothing else but the truth, because it is the truth that will set us free. So, facilitator, if you get attacked in the process, I am sorry. My next port of call will be to salute those who have been operating community radio stations without licenses. I think you've been doing quite well, and I urge you to continue to operate until you get licenses from the government, because in my view, you have not committed any offense whatsoever. You haven't done anything wrong in pushing for, obtaining licenses to run these community radio stations. And I know from the testimonies that I've been getting here, some of you had to be arrested, some had to be harassed, and so forth and so on. But my word is that that is the way to go, considering the people whom you are approaching, seeking those licenses. You are talking about people who, who are talking about the liberation struggle. We heard you talking about what Muchangwa said, that you must fight for these things and so forth. We're also talking about the people who, again, in my view, come from an establishment that has got the kiss of death. Everything that they touch freezes. Everything that they touch will be buried, it dies. Look at the I mean, there are several examples that I can mention here, but I'll just mention a few. Talk about the economy, talk about the roads, you know, talk about everything that has died since 1980. And you expect these same people to be sensible enough to say, come and let's sit on the table and discuss about licensing community radio stations. Not in our lifetime, I'm sure. They will not do that. So, facilitator, the struggle actually must continue and it must increase in tempo, in my view. Having said that, just last night I was watching ZTV News and I saw the acting Minister of Finance. We still have the acting Minister of Finance, by the way. Don't have a substantive minister after the November arrangement. He was actually admitting, unashamedly of course, to say that we are sorry that we haven't done much about you know, licensing community radio stations. And you are saying we've broken the ZBC monopoly. I don't know how it was broken. I didn't get his explanation properly. But he considered that nothing much has been done as far as the licensing of community radio stations is concerned. And as I was seated here, someone was actually saying that the Broadcasting Services Act that gave birth to the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe was enacted in 2001. And this is like 17, 18 years down the line. We have a regulatory authority that is not regulating anything, that is simply frustrating progressive Zimbabweans who wanted to share information, critical information, facts, not fake news, with the rest of the citizens of this country. They are being denied, they are frustrated on a daily basis. That is the reason why I said earlier on that let's continue to operate without licenses until someone gets to their, these people get to their senses and think that this is the noble thing to do. They give you licenses to operate, but vanokubatai matwa kumberi mberi. Am I clear, facilitator? As I speak this, or as I say this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm guided by the Constitution, which we all agreed that is the supreme law of the land through Section 2 of this Constitution of 2013. The licensing of community radio stations actually fulfills sections that were recited earlier on, Section 62, Section 61, and Section 63 of the Constitution. There is no way we can enjoy freedom of expression, access to information without the presence of these community radio stations. It will be a joke, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, as I was preparing for this discussion, I just thought of, you know, specifically focusing on Section 61, subsection 3, which says that broadcasting and other electronic media of communication have freedom of establishment, subject only to state licensing procedures that are necessary to regulate airwaves and other forms of signal distribution and are independent of control by government or by political or commercial interests. It cannot be clearer than that. It's very clear, and we are saying this is the supreme law of the land. So why are we not having community radio stations being licensed up to now, since 2001, when we had the enactment of the Broadcasting Services Act? It's a question that we must all answer. And then if you are to also focus on the Broadcasting Services Act, particularly looking at Section 2A, that talks about, you know, they set up these objectives in the Act, very clear objectives, and I will read to you one of them. It says, to regulate broadcasting services and provide for the control of the broadcasting services bans in order to achieve the following. 1, to promote public, commercial, and community broadcasting services in the interest of the public, and to ensure the independence, impartiality, and viability of public broadcasting services. That, to me, again, is very clear. So, if because of bureaucracy and inefficiency, people are failing to move quickly to license radio stations. Surely, radio stations, these community radios, they must not wait. And like I congratulated you earlier on, it's good you have not waited, you are broadcasting, and we like your content. Yes, we like their content. And of course, getting back to, you know, the issue of promoting citizen, but I'm coming from the residents' perspective. The issue of promoting citizen participation in electoral processes. We are all aware that we are faced with a watershed harmonized election that whose date is yet to be announced. Although people are just, you know, talking in hushed voice, saying it can be July, it can be August, and so forth. And others are saying one of the coupists made reference to that date before, you know, before ED can announce it. Before ED announces it. So we're not sure. He said it's July. We hope it's going to be July, or it's going to be August, or it's not going to be there. We don't know. But the fact that we are seeing mother of all big, you know, billboards and so forth indicates that we are approaching an election. It's only the date that is missing from the equation, and surely I think we will get to the election. So, from the residents' perspective, the presence of community radio stations affords a cheaper way of campaigning for aspiring, let's talk of councillors. Outside the expensive way of doing door-to-door campaigns, like what Ngosanamo is doing. I don't know where he is right now. He must have started somewhere in Bedbridge and moving up. I don't know where he is right now. The last time I communicated with him, he was in Mashingo, and I actually warned him that he might finish that process well after the, you know, the elections. But that's his preferred way of campaigning, and we can't, you know, fault him for that. So outside these door-to-door campaigns, community radio stations will provide this platform where you can reach out to a wider audience within that community, which you cannot reach out to maybe through these door-to-door, you know, campaigns or through rallies. So this is one of the reasons why we are saying community radio stations, unlicensed as they are, must continue to, you know, provide these platforms. You know, some of these aspiring candidates do not have the means. I'm talking about the resources to fund some of these campaigns. You know, during campaigning times, resources are needed. I mean, you can't doubt that. So it gives the residents a voice, a platform to interact with the policymakers. At our level, we're talking about, you know, duty bearers, we are the rights holders. We want to know what is going on at townhouse, be it our you know, Harare townhouse or, you know, Chitungwiza and other areas. We want to know what these guys are doing in responding to the numerous challenges that we are facing as residents. And again, to me, it provides a platform for effective communications. I mean, effective communication by local authorities. It's easier to communicate via the radio than to, you know, post things in newspapers, you know, and try to use these commercial radio stations and so forth. For instance, I want to give you an example. Suppose the city of Harare wants to do some major, you know, maintenance work at Morton Jeffrey. You cannot burden Star FM with that message to say on Sunday evening you are going to close Morton Jeffrey, and it's going to be broadcasted to Zimbabwe and some parts of Mozambique and South Africa. That they wanted to close Morton Jeffrey. I mean, obviously you agree with me that it's not necessary. If you can use a community radio station which is located in Harare that narrowcast to Harare residents only, I mean, you would have saved yourself from the hassle of telling Mozambicans who are probably mourning La Kama that Moton Jeff will be closed from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. On Sunday. Again, in my view, community radio stations are sources of verifiable information, verifiable data. I mean, there is no way they can continuously churn out fake news. You were talking about fake news. It is that kind of verifiable information that we want, especially in light of the scourge of social media that we're talking about, where everyone can send anything to anyone anyhow, sending pictures of who would have been involved in an accident without even notifying the next of kin that so and so has been involved in an accident. I don't know how we are now behaving as Zimbabweans in light of the age of social media, that when you get to an accident site, the first thing that you do is to pull out your big phone and start to take photos. We have someone who is wailing inside the car, who wants to be helped, to be plugged out of that car, but what you think best of doing is to just to take photos and say, accident in Marondera. So what? Why can't you help these people who are trying to to survive this accident? So community radios will actually provide verifiable information to save us from fake news that we generate on social media every hour, every minute, in every direction. And from the residents' perspective, again, we believe that these community radio stations strengthens or buttresses rather the principle of devolution that is enshrined in the Constitution, chapter 14 of the Constitution. When we have people in communities discussing issues that are relevant to them, not to discuss that Spencer Banda was found somewhere in Kambuzuma, probably with someone's wife or something to that extent. We have communities sitting down discussing issues related to development, not related to these social vagaries and so forth. I think I've talked for too long, Chairperson. Let me just round up. But let me round up by saying that yesterday was World Press Freedom Day, and I don't know whether we as Zimbabweans were supposed to celebrate it or to observe it, because there is a difference between celebrating and observing. I'm saying this because of our activity, the activity of the people whom I referred to earlier on as people with a death touch, people who hate the media with a passion. Were we supposed to celebrate the World Press Freedom Day? I'm not sure about that. I think I can open it up to the members in this house, but my view is that we're simply supposed to observe and mourn that not much has been done to ensure that members of the press, print and electronic media can do their work without hindrances. To mourn that despite several calls from the civil society and from everyone to deal with the archaic laws like AIPA, POSA and so forth, we still have these laws hindering the work of journalists. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, let me also salute the journalists for working under very trying conditions, but making it nevertheless. And also to mention once again, I need to emphasize this, to mention it once again, that unlicensed community radio stations must continue to operate. We will support them. Whatever you want, we will support you. Thank you very much, Facilitator.
Thank you, Mr. Moyo, for your presentation, and I picked the fact that community radios must continue to operate even if they are unlicensed. They must continue to promote access to information using different ways as is happening at the moment. And you also emphasize the fact that we must continue to fight for the licensing to happen. You also talked about the fact that community radios play a very critical role in terms of promoting access to information at a local level. And as residents, you'll be very happy, and it will be very useful for you to have licensed community radios in your local areas, so that you can have information and you can express yourself. And you also highlight the fact that community radios can play a very critical role during election time, where citizens need informed information to make informed decisions. So you've heard the presentations from our 4 panelists, and I know you have been picking up things, and some of you have been recording. And I know you probably want to continue to interact with these comrades. But before we do that, let me recognize and respect my chairperson who is here, Pelagia Kapuya. I respect you. Hi. Right. So now we are taking questions. You direct your questions to a specific panelist so that they can prepare a response for you. I'm going to take 3 people. 1, 2. Is there a woman who wants to ask? Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Yes. Donald.
Okay. So probably my question is, I'll start with.
What does net?
The light is too much. So let me start by directing my question to this one is for everyone, I think, including Zakas. Yeah. So 10 years down the line, probably 13 years down the line, we're still talking about community radio initiatives and the need to have them licensed. So my question is, as we celebrate this World Press Freedom Day, shouldn't we be also discussing issues around changing the strategy? Because I've been seeing for the past few years pamphlets, statements and things like that, but nothing really has materialized. So shouldn't we also be discussing issues around a change in strategy? Then I want to also direct my question to Kwaliwe and John, I think. Now, I have a problem with issues around professionalism and ethical reporting. Already, if you look at mainstream media, we're already struggling with comrades who have not taken the basics in terms of journalism training. Now, when you open up community media, you are now also saying that it's for the community, by the community. Come, let's talk about our issues. Okay? You take your TBC there, come, let's talk about our issues. You take your agri-tax officer, come, let's talk about it. You take about Jindaramambo, come, let's talk about it. So issues around professionalism and ethical reporting, how then are we going to deal with that? Because that for me also poses a challenge. And I saw Lofty walking in, director, here he said, hello, yes. So I'm hoping that also Lofty would be able to help us with that one, to say that if we are going to then go the community media way, how do we bring in issues of professionalism and ethical reporting? Issues around human rights. So that one is for you, madam. I didn't get your name, sorry. Already we have been discussing issues of issues to do with appreciating our constitution. So you have even comrades within the journalism fraternity telling you that POSA IFA should be repealed. You ask them, what sections are you talking about? They have no idea because they've not interacted with the constitution. So now you want to have community radio stations dealing with human rights issues. where people have not even interacted with the constitution, let alone a constitution that is in vernacular. So I'm hoping that you would help us with that one. How do we then champion and deal with issues around human rights as community radio stations? I'll stop here for now. I was going to talk to Mr. Moore, but I'll do that later on.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, well, mine is, I think, a comment and some brief questions to the panelists. I think the best comment is that the Constitution of Zimbabwe is really, clear. I mean, as clear as it can get in respect of the freedom of expression. And it is my and press. And I believe it is fundamental that any universities, be it anything in Zimbabwe, can express themselves. So I'm here to see a community radio station that starts to broadcast and is outlawed. And I think that is going to be a very key starting point for Zakras, I think, and those that are involved in that field. We can't keep on saying our freedoms of expression should be limited to me speaking. If I'm speaking right now here, why am I not having a community radio station really broadcasting what I'm speaking right now? Because I'm still speaking it and people are listening to it. So literally, I mean, we're trying to convolute issues and make them so bigger than what really they should be, which is to test the power. And I like the theme that keeping power in check. The only way we can keep real power in check is when we begin to say, okay, the Constitution provides for this, and we do it. And when we do it, fundamentally we're testing the sincerity of power in terms of maintaining what he exactly said, justice and the rule of law. And for me, that is where the whole thing, I know the comrade that you talk about it, once did to actually broadcast. Let's broadcast. Let's have Pataka radio somewhere in this Caribbean broadcasting. Let's broadcast, proper broadcast, people listen to the radios, and then we start from there. Because we cannot, until we disrupt the power and give it a checkpoint to say, this is check. I'm using my constitutional right, and then you have all these IPA laws and broadcasting, and then we deal with that from that point of disruption. So we've already moved the point. But then my critical question comes into the media itself. And I think it's tied to what I was talking about around professionalism. That do we really want a media that is so professional? And by professional, I think is to give all those nice, those nice little ways to say, okay, things happened here and there. I also want a critical media. I believe the media must not just be professional, but also critical. So what is the role of the critical media in the vein of professionalism? At least as I understand it as Zimbabwe, when you're supposed to report things in Bashan, if someone has been assaulted by people you say they were, given physical counseling, something like that. We're trying to be so professional. When it's the government that has done this, police were deployed, they beat up people, they did this, they did that. I mean, that's critical. That's critical. What is the role of critical analysis and critical reporting in respect of that professional aspect that we're talking about? Yeah, for me, that would be my question to all the panelists.
Thank you. Yes.
So, instead, how many questions do we have? I had a question for Mr. Simba. I think it was almost the same question as my brother here, but I think Pride took a radical turn, which has answered my question, but I'll still pose it. But first, I'll give you my understanding and what I got from what you said. Government is not willing to license community radio station. It is not going to. That is why the question I was going to ask you was, how do we increase the tempo? At the start of your presentation, you have said it is now time to increase the tempo. You have seen what we have been doing. Now we have to increase the tempo. And I would like to subscribe to Friday Mkono's proposal that we start broadcasting and then we deal with the problem when they bring the problem. And then on Madam Koliwe's point that community radio stations programs are not as sexy as they should be. I think the community radio personalities on maybe Cora, Radio VOP, etc., they need capacitation in terms of maybe trainings, workshops by people who are more experienced. Elder John Masubi is here, you have been at Radio VOP, Mablaza requires people who can capacitate them, train them. that they become sexier. So that they become sexier in the compared And then the last one, my question to Madam Kodiwa, you said we should not disrupt or it was on fake news. You were saying sort of like Pixar fake news is like Pixar community. I did not exactly get what you were trying to say.
Who's going to start?
Thank you. I'll start with I'll take 4 questions and very brief. I like to be. That there is no political will to change the landscape. And I'll quickly jump to Pride's question in responding to that. We have this misconception that broadcasting kupiwa masai pa radio kuitira kuti vanhu vachune. Saka inini ndikaita voice podcast yangu, distribute about my opinion around a particular issue. I have, in a sense, broadcast, because broadcast is sharing information over different forms of technology. So what you are doing now when you share or download a voice note, an audio voice note, or you watch me on Sly, I was looking on Sly Media just now on Facebook, it is a broadcast in a sense. The challenge really when you start talking about community media is about who is accessing it. Because you start worrying about whether everybody in the community can hear you. So when I'm talking about the strategy and creativity, it's not with a push, in this context, it's not a push for the reforms of the laws, because we know it's not going to happen. But if we listen to what the residents are saying in terms of continue broadcasting, the strategy that we're looking for is a strategy to change the manner in which we are trying to get the information that we're packaging. We started off distributing CDs. You know, comrades would record CDs, print 100 and distribute, put them in a combi. But right now we don't actually need that. So Donald, my simple answer is there's no better strategy than to change the way that we start thinking about broadcasting as community media activists. Pane WhatsApp, we can utilize that. Can we shorten the products, citizens' perspectives, share them as a voice podcast distributed on social media? That way, there will be a lot of pressure put on government in terms of licensing, if we even start thinking about licensing the analog-wise, because right now they are going to converge the Postal and Telecommunications Regulatory Authority and the Broadcasting Services Authority, because the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe, because they know you can no longer start to think about radio or broadcasting in one sense without thinking about internet in terms of internet connection. Your second question was on professionalism and ethical reporting. Look, I know that it's unfortunate, and I'm going to have to say this, but if you look at the quality of people who are on the new commercial radio stations now, you walk into their radio station and say, how many of you went to Kosa or to Harare Polytech to learn to interview a very difficult person, like we were taught by, many of us were taught by Ogandor. This is how you deal with them. So it becomes very difficult to start talking about ethics of the journalist on a radio station, that is licensed, if they don't have that background. But it is not our business as the mainstream media to worry about ethical content that is being produced by a citizen reporter who has no idea about leading questions, who has no idea about factual checking, balance, and right of reply. What the issue is right now is that those people who are broadcasting on the professional, on the licensed commercial radio stations, we as the citizens should be actually demanding that they have ethical conduct, because we are still going to say, Zvandakanzwa pa radio ningi ningi ichokwadi. But if you have a broadcaster or a journalist on that radio station who has no idea how to get the actual facts out of people who are privileged to be on their radio station, then it's problematic. So in terms of countering fake news, and in terms of the mainstream media pressing, and let's not look at community radio or community media, whether it's a community newspaper, Midlands Observer, as though they are not mainstream. Because when we talk about mainstream, tukutaura majournalist akaenda kuchikoro akagara padesk akaita exam akawana diploma or degree re-journalism. So we can't start to compete with those people within that context. Then the last issue that I'll deal with is the issue of I think I've dealt with everything. Yeah.
Okay. I think by and large, Koliwe has touched on very critical issues. One thing that we should really emphasize, as she put it across, is access to information by our communities. You know, you may be denied that access to information. For instance, you may have invited some licensed radio stations to come and cover this event, but they will give you an invoice and say, a huge invoice, and say, this is what you need to do. But that should not deny people access to information. I think that is very critical, because things have changed. While in the past we started maybe with just radio stations and government radio stations or government controlled radio stations and newspapers, I think we have to agree that times have changed and people are accessing information through various ways. And as media people, let's take advantage of that. And let's say you have been denied to access to information via that medium, but still you have that information. As has been alluded to or pointed out in this discussion, we've had breaking news actually. Yes, there is a lot of fake news indeed, but also let's give credit where it's due. There's been a lot of breaking news that has come via social media. And why not take advantage of that and make sure that our communities, our people actually get information firsthand? If we are innovative, if we are creative, we can actually go big time. I made reference during my presentation that even those licensed stations are aware of the power of social media, which is why all those programs, or most of those programs, including news bulletins that have to go via transmitters, are going via Facebook. Because they know that a lot of people are accessing news via Facebook, which is why they do not only trust their transmitters, which are scattered around the country, but they also run parallel broadcasts through free social media platforms. So that's very important. And then there was also an issue about professionalism. I think ZACRAS, MISA, and other organizations that have been pushing for community media, they've also given some training to community broadcasters that goes up to their level. They may not be high up there, but I think for the purposes of their programs, they have not just been thrown into the deep end. They have received some basic training as to how to interview people, how to chair a discussion, and some basic ethical issues and so forth, which, as Koliwe has mentioned, we are not seeing even on licensed radio stations, because some of the people who are presenting these programs, whether they received that training or they didn't, it's not very clear, because there are a lot of gaps. And even when you are watching news with non-trained journalists at home, they can point out to so many things that are not in order. It's fine. They'll say, well, did this person actually go to journalism school? My children have said, you have started journalism schools and you have trained people. Did this one pass through your college? I doubt. If you find an ordinary person, pointing that, then I think we should take that serious. So the citizen journalists and these other journalists that are on helping people to access information, they're actually receiving training. And I agree, Koliwe, that yes, we have to continue to offer that kind of training so that things are done properly, as Mr. Lofty Dube is getting that point loud and clear. I think most of the other things you've mentioned. Don, the question that you asked your wife about change of strategy, I think yes, there's been change of strategy. There's been talk about licensing community radio stations, but it's going beyond that, because these initiatives are now finding a way of enabling people to access information. This is why at their symposium, Zakras agreed that, look here, while we advocate for the licensing of stations, let's give people information. People must access information. And I think that's what the Patsakas and other initiatives are doing until, the communities are licensed. I joked with a friend last time who said, you have appeared before the regulator looking for a license and you have failed and so forth. And I've said, but that has not stopped me from giving people information. And I think I've given them quite effectively.
I don't know who was asking me a question to his wife. I don't know. I can see most of the questions have been answered, but let me start with the question that was directed to me by my colleague there on how do we increase the tempo. You see, throughout my presentation, what I was trying to put across is that when the government of the day becomes that irresponsible to the point of prescribing to people who to talk to and who to see on a day-to-day basis, our only duty as citizens and residents is to just defy. We must defy everything related to that. That is the only way you can send a clear message to the person who is doing that prescription job, that you don't like it. So in terms of how to increase the tempo, I mentioned it here that let's have more community radio stations opening up. Even launching that they are opening up, having these big ceremonies that in Bulawayo 100 community stations will open, will be attending and giving solidarity messages, saying this is the way to go. Yes, it's the way to go. They must open up, they must operate. And I think this also dovetails to what Comrade Obama was saying when he said, why can't you just broadcast and we see who comes to your place and arrest you? This is not the moment and the time to fear arrest and to fear harassment. Mutswangwa might be a mad person who is unfortunately advising the president, but I think he told the truth that if you want some things, you must fight for them. Let's fight for these community radio stations and see if we don't get them, I tell you. So that's how we can increase the tempo. These people who are involved in these community radios, you have the state-of-the-art equipment. I've seen some in some of these stations where I was invited. State-of-the-art equipment, and you can broadcast from anywhere. And so anyhow, and so what is stopping you from doing that? We should be gathering here, commemorating the fact that despite the fact that the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe does not want to license radio stations in Zimbabwe, we have opened 700 in 1 year. That's what we need to commemorate, instead of commemorating the World Press Freedom Day when we don't have these freedoms. What are we commemorating? We are just, playing ZANU-PF songs. That's all. And again, Comrade Obama, you said, what is the role of critical media? Just to add on to that, to say that we all know the role of critical media. It must be to tell the truth, just to tell the truth, how it happened. without necessarily, you know, taking sides. You don't have to take sides. Your duty is to report, to tell the rest of the community that we're going to close Moton Jeffrey. I think that is the truth, even though it reaches Mozambique. I mean, to people who do not even want to hear that, but it's the truth. Moton Jeffrey would be closed on Sunday, period. Yes, or even what happened in Buera. Thank you. And then there is the issue of changing strategy from my dreadlocked brother there. Okay, so that's the husband. Congratulations. You were talking about changing strategies and so forth, but I'm sure I just agree with you that this is the time to change tact, to change strategies, because we cannot continue to, you know, even a drunkard will not do that. Jump a whole auto and move on. So I'm sure we are not drunkards, we are not fools. We are people who can, you know, make proper and sound decisions based on clear strategies. So why can't we have new strategies? And this is a challenge to pirate, you know, community radio stations. Let's change strategies, and let's change strategies and move on. I mean, we'll come here next year celebrating my successes, and I challenge you to start now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Donald, for your question around how do we champion human rights using community radio. Maybe the main reason why Amnesty International has joined in the fight for the licensing of community radios is because we believe that community radios can be used. Okay, community radios can be used as a platform via which people can be educated around their human rights. It is the platform via which the Constitution of Zimbabwe can be, can be tailor-made for the rural communities in Chipatsura, there in Mutare. We believe that community radios can be the platform via which, when people know their rights, you know, they can freely express themselves via the information that they get via community radio. So we are saying that community radios need to be licensed so that it can create a platform for human rights education, which is a tool for collective empowerment of the people, so that they know the IPAs, so that they know the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that I'm talking about, so that they can also, develop the skills to actually claim the very human rights that they would have learned about via community radio. Thank you.
And then the director for VMCZ.
Okay, there was also an issue around the capacity of community radio initiatives. Let me take this opportunity to say that in partnership with ZACRAS, we've been going around community radio initiatives, assessing their impact with a view of coming up with recommendations on what capacity the community radios required, so that maybe we can lobby those that have the capacity to support community radio initiatives.
About ethics and professionalism, directed to the director for VMCZ, Mr. Lofty, do you want to respond to that issue also? Thank you.
Thank you, Donald, for that question. The ongoing processes were engaged with the ZACRAS towards coming up with a community code of conduct. I think it's already done. What we now need to do is to get the communities to come up and endorse them. I'm going to use an example. I know it's a very unpopular example. I was watching a live broadcast the day before yesterday. Actually, I was in another interview at another station when we were watching this. I'm sure you all saw that. I watched the whole show. The last 10 minutes were very interesting for me. in terms of what happened. I got several calls in the morning in terms of how professional was the way that show was conducted. I had a chat with someone who's close to the producing of that show. They saw no problem. I wouldn't want to judge them, I wouldn't want to blame them. But a lot of things happen in journalism. Sometimes you have to make it exciting. But the bottom line comes to the issue of ethics. Sometimes I've had a discussion with some of the coming up of the commercial radio stations. You saw a lot of people who are not trained. And when you ask them about issues, they really argue. And you say to yourself, 101 journalism would not do this. This argument will not happen with someone in 101. But other people, because of their appreciation and understanding of issues that are outside journalism, some of your presenters are engineers. They did engineering, agriculture, geography, and so some are beauty. The majority actually. You look nice. You should speak well, everyone knows you, you should be a journalist, you should say something sensible. So you get to that scenario where someone, even when you say to them, but this is unethical, they still argue with you, but it's bad. There's no bad when it's unethical. Yes.
Pick more. Yes, my brother there. Yes, my brother here. Do you have a lady who wants to ask?
No, just picking.
Is there another one who's not a lady?
No.
Okay.
This idea of
all right. Yes, a lady there. Nice. Nice. Wonderful. Thank you. Right. Can you start?
Thank you. I think we as the media are failing. Firstly, we are the ones who are supposed to be like their voice to the authorities, but we are failing to speak our own concerns to the authorities. So I think in that respect, we have failed. If we fail to speak our own concerns to the authorities, how then do we speak on behalf of the people?
Okay.
So the constitution of Zimbabwe gives us access to information. We also have IBA restricting access to information. But we always complain. We meet people, we meet at the forum, we complain. IBA is restricting us, IBA is restricting us. I think pride was right. We need to change strategy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's a comment, but I'm sure it will receive another comment, a response. Right. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Nyaya makomiti radio stations ndavane kusuma kwakanyanya pakuihwisisa neudzamu hwacho. Chandisiri kunyatsofarikana chechekuti platform inoyi iri vanhu vari kuramba vachibvunza kuti why say tisina maresiness, why saka ndinoda kuti handizivi kuti achazotipa adza ari panze here. Tikati nokuti handiti tiri kuda kuadvocata kuti tiwane maresiness, tadii kuti tibetserane navanhu kuti tivaudze kuti sei hurumende isiri kupa maresidence, kuti vanhu vagone kuhwisisa nyaya iyoyo. Kana vahwisisa vanogwa hondo yacho sevakanzi vagwena mutsvanga vaya vagowanda, hondo yacho ikokurimidza kuti kuunika tiwane maresidence. Saka mungangotibetserawo panyaya yekuti why kai ngaive nechibhikosi chacho todi.
Yeah, mazano nemibvunzo. Yes.
I have two brief small questions, comments. The first one is to do with I've noticed, I think many have noticed, since after last year's so-called revolution, I've noticed that the media space or the journalists, they've been behaving like Hamas, to which every problem is now renewed. there is no critical analysis of facts, of issues that have been occurring. It's more like people, they are taking what personal issues to do with, do they like this one or do they hate this one? Is there a principle? There's no principle steps. That's number one. Number two is to do with, I've noticed that we're turning this whole situation about press into a whole focus or a joke of themes. In 2003, if I'm not mistaken, there was a theme that the media we have is not the media we need. But 14 or 15 years down the line, we are having now another theme before we realize another theme. Today we are talking about keeping power in check, but we have not accomplished that fact of what of trying to have an open media space. Because we said at the turn of the millennium, the media we have is not what we need, but there's no change. So what guarantees are there that the journalists who are around are actually fighting for that reality, or they are now merely living their degrees?
Yeah. But ndambokurudzirai kuti ngatiregai kuita ma-presentations tivunze mvunzo and aiwa brief yacho.
Okay, I was just going to say, maybe it's both a question and a comment, but I think let us not limit ourselves to the box of licensing. I think, do we actually need license to speak? Because for me, community radio is to say the community must speak and each other. We meet each other in Kutsime, we meet each other Kuuni, we meet each other Kundari, and we talk. We want those conversations simply to be known by communities outside that particular confine. And I don't think that we actually need license to do that. And I think the fact that we're still focusing on licensing of community radio is because we've not started to really demand the right to say our right is the right to speak. And when you start to speak, you must challenge us not to speak. And then it must be the government running around with licenses say you must speak, but only in this way. Not us asking the government that we want to speak and give us the license to do so. That's my view.
I think most of the comments or questions have been answered, especially the political will. I think from long back, different initiatives have tried by all means to advocate for the opening up of space. That's why some media organizations have been bombed, journalists arrested, gone on trial. I heard someone saying, let's go for a period of arrests. Some have gone through that already. 15 years ago, we went through a situation where our whole complex was bombed, where we went to court, I think, for almost 10 months, being accused of broadcasting without a license, and then being discharged by the courts because they did not find anything wrong with that. I think we have walked that road, and we continue to walk the road. But as someone said, let's also change strategies. Let's come up with new ways of doing things. And one of the comments that came from this side of saying, you may want to ask yourselves, do we really need licenses? What is it that we are failing to put across? I think Koliwe, in her presentation, gave us an overview of how things have changed, how different gadgets, through social media, new media, and so forth, has given us that opportunity of actually spreading news, spreading information. And why are we not really reflecting on that and utilizing them to the full, so that people access information? I think I keep on emphasizing how are people accessing information. The example given by Mr. Lofty Dube, who was participating in a program but also being able to listen to another one, is also a case in point.
Thank you. There were not questions, but then I think the issue of critical media, a critical media keeps coming up. I think we need to be very clear what we mean when we say we want a critical media, because I think the argument is based on an assumption that you can have a media that is not partisan, right? But I think the critical media that we're talking about now, within this context, is a media that reports factually the different opinions and can be able to give you a balance of those opinions, which is why earlier I spoke to the Zim fact. You remember the story around the doctor strike. where there was the $329 salary. Yeah. The tags, Manons Machima placards actually said it, and it went viral. People were angry. Hell, even the doctors were claiming they wanted Kurora Ruvenekone $300. But then when you look at it and you say, we want a critical media pride, we are saying within which context, and is it verified that that money is actually $300? So we want a critical media, yes, but what is it we're talking about? We're talking about a media who can be critical by looking at what these public officials are actually saying and weighing it against scientific research, ma reports anonyorwa, ma trends, year 15 billion. We later learned that even the world does not produce diamonds worth 15 billion. You know, so this is what we're talking about when we say critical media. And then Baba Vunza Mvunzo Nechi Shona, mina ndindebele, but I'm going to try and respond to you in Shona. The reason, yeah, atis kuzopiwa ma license ekutiti tepenyure sema communities kana kuti sevanu vanogara munharaunda nenyaya yekuti tinotaurisa ende pakutaurisa kwedu tinobvunza mibvunzo ende pakubvunza mibvunzo especially tikawana mafoni edu awa tinomobilizana zvatakaita patakaita nationwide stay away. Kana tapiwa malicense vanhu vachabvunza mibvunzo ichakoniwa kupindurwa nevanhu vasina kujaira kubvunzwa mibvunzo iyoyo zvinozokonzeresa. This is why we need to create that awareness with the people to say we don't have these licenses because we cannot be active citizens. We cannot engage, we cannot seek accountability, we cannot even put people who should be in the spotlight on the spotlight. So how do we do it? How do we get an ordinary citizen atorine challenge yokuti yaana mari yechingwa kuti afunge kuti ari kuda kunge achitaura or have an opinion about something that is happening in their country? The realization, and I think you need to look at it even when you look at the messages or the critical conversations we're having on WhatsApp groups. Even if they are presented as a joke, someone actually has an opinion about everything now. And the fact that we have more information, we are able to say, as you know, we can't say, which is why I think that the conversation on fake news is not even an issue. Because people know what is fake news. And they can read a story and say, but this is fake. So we're talking about issues around media literacy and people being able to engage amongst themselves, people being able to put people to account, which is why you find those community leaders or members of parliament who are on social media are in a tight. Because every time somebody is going to ask them. Then the last intervention is for Kudzai to say women are not ladies. Because lady presumes that you behave in a certain manner, the way that women used to, behave during the Shakespearean time. But if you have women like me, and you call us ladies, we actually look around to say, but with the way that I, number one, dress, respond to my everyday challenges, it's very unladylike behavior. So you refer to us as women, comrade.
Thank you so much, Koliwe. I like that because I'm a women's rights activist and I'm really enjoying the conversation. But anyway, let me respond to the issue around how do we speak on behalf of people. As Amnesty International, in partnership with ZACRAS, we are saying that we don't need to speak on behalf of people. We need to come up with ways of ensuring that the very same people are empowered enough to be able to speak about why they need a community radio and what content they want in that community radio. So part of the initiative that we are working in partnership with the UN Democracy Fund is to ensure that community radios initiatives develop the advocacy tools that they need in order to advocate, to speak for themselves, to engage with government, to engage with whoever authority is responsible for the licensing of community radios, so that the voice is not the voice of maybe, should I say, media personnel or the voice of Amnesty International, but it becomes the voice of the people themselves in terms of what they really want around community radios. Why? And then the next question is around why community radios not being licensed. I think if we look back, it's clear that it's pure lack of political will, because they believe that they have the perception that community radios can push a regime change agenda. That is very clear. That is the reason, the reason why community radios are not being licensed. So I think in terms of strategy, we need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And we're not going to give up because they are refusing to license community radios. We are going to ensure that communities are capacitated enough to be able to speak for themselves and advocate for the licensing of their community radios. And there was also an issue around there is no need for them to be licensed, and that we can still broadcast using other platforms. Let us not forget that the digital comms era has left out quite a number of people. Our research that we are carrying out, that we are yet to come up with a report, speaks to the fact that there are some people that don't even know what Facebook is, what Twitter is, and we need not to discriminate against those people. We need those people to be educated. We need those people to be empowered around human rights and any other issues. We need those people to participate on issues that affect them. And we believe that community radios are the platforms via which those people that do not have access to digital comms can also participate and can also express themselves, can also gain tools, can also gain any other information that they require for their very existence. Thank you.
Thank you, woman.
Thank you very much, facilitator. Because we did not receive questions. Pushing. I think because we are hard workers as Zimbabweans, we always believe in pushing, but we are forgetting that we are now in this pushing syndrome now, where, if I'm to explain by examples, for instance, in 2013, we got a new constitution. In 2013, people voted overwhelmingly for a constitution, and then we started using it. So instead of using that constitution, which has got clear clauses about, like the section 2 that talks about the supremacy of that same constitution, people started to say, no, we now need to push for harmonization of legislation to the constitution. And I can tell you, we are still stuck in that mentality and in that kind of syndrome. We are pushing for harmonization. Is that our duty, to push for harmonization of laws to the constitution? I think our duty was just to come up with a good constitution, which we must simply start to use. Now, with the advent of the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe, people are saying, now let's push to. You still want to push? We're saying let's push Mugabe out. He was out. So, I mean, can we confine ourselves to a lifetime of pushing? I'm not sure about that. If we can do that, even women push once. You know, yes, they push once.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Right. If there are, okay. Because it's my boss. Otherwise, I was going to close this. All right.
Thank you very much. Maybe also to add my feminist voice to the two women here who have spoken. If you say, thank you, woman, it doesn't really, you know. Am I right? Okay. Yes. And also if you say sexist comments like even women push, you see? Thank you. Thank you very much. I think just for the sake of speaking, because I've come here, I just want to echo what I've heard. I didn't manage to hear the presentations of, I think, two of the panelists, but from the way they were responding, I can just assume what they had said in their presentations. And I would like to echo that, especially what you were saying, Koliwe, in terms of critical media and in relation to keeping ourselves in check. Of course, we are talking about keeping power in check, but before we go on to keep somebody in check, how are we keeping ourselves in check as people who are disseminating information? Are we making sure that what we are disseminating is factual? And even beyond that, because sometimes just giving facts is too dry to just give facts. But are we then saying, because this is the situation, this is what it means? That is what is critical analysis from what I learned. That you are also offering, you know, your view in terms of what you understand, but this is what's happening. The minister is saying, I've got an open, in fact, he's not saying that I have an open door policy, he's saying I have a no door policy. There's, as I removed the door is not there. And then as media, we broadcast that there's a no door policy. But what does it mean in real sense? Is there a no door policy when you are trying to make a simple appointment to meet the minister, but it has taken Zakras, I don't know how long, to get just an appointment to meet with the minister, the acting minister, you said, Simba. He's not a substantive minister, he's running another ministry, here he's just acting. Maybe what we need now to do is to make sure that we advocate for a minister, to have a minister who is responsible for the ministry, because if we are to take care of in terms of speaking on behalf of the community, it's not our duty to do so. Our duty is to make sure that communities are able to speak, you know, for themselves, about issues that they feel like speaking about, not for us to be able to speak for others. That's why even in the development sector, you know, terms like empowerment, you know, they are now being shunned because they're saying you can't empower, you know, so you are assuming that somebody does not have power. But somebody has power. What they just need to do is for you to maybe to help amplify that power, so that that power is exposed, that power has an impact. So I think that's what I would like to say, Kudzi, my employee.
Thank you. What of Farisa? Okay. All right, just be brief.
Okay, all right. Okay, usually can get a gathering journalists usually but what I hear about today is takuziva taneshkureti hanzi na pride, hanzi na elder Simba, hanzi neni ngati broadcastei, and then na security forces akazoya chikamunetsa totangira ipa. Let us do that. I'm not against what my initiatives are trying online, nema new radio stations, WhatsApp, SoundCloud, Facebook, but not everyone is access, especially my mission. Let us find a way to be on shortwave, if need be, if it is possible. Let us find a way to smuggle ourselves onto FM, if it is possible. And then, let us fight. That is the fight. The only fighting Saga Zakras.
Fellow Zimbabweans.
Yeah, I'm a vice.
As long as my boss is here, and thank you very much. I hope, in fact, not one, there are two of them. They got that message. So thank you very much. I think that's one of the outcomes of this conversation that we're having, and we are taking note of that fact. And please, when you are now calling and say, let's go for the fight, whatever it may be, we also want to see you. We also want to see the energy and this commitment. You want to experience it, you want to feel it. I think it's very important. Maybe let me just thank my panelist, our panelist, Rosalina. Thank you very much for coming and being part of this conversation and being a panelist. Koliwe Majama, thank you very much for being here and sharing your views on this issue. Mr. Masuk, we appreciate you, and please keep sharing with us your experience. It's very important. The leader of residents, including me, we also want to thank you for coming, and we appreciate your views, and they've been very useful in these conversations. And all of you, I want to thank you for your participation, for your coming, and for sharing your views and your energies and commitment to this struggle. I always, when I talk about this, I talk about from Jokonya to Kayamoy, where I say, Jokonya said, what is this thing about? And then I come to a gentleman called Skangisogov, may he so rest in peace. He said, who is behind this? When he's talking about community radio. And then after that, then we had Comrade Jonathan Moyo, twice, who said, there's a hand behind this. And then after Professor Jonathan Moyo, we also had a comrade called like Christopher Mshowe, who was just quiet. Just quiet until he went. He's now, he became a minister of scholarships after being quiet. Then we have Simon Kayamoyo, who spoke yesterday, and he said, firstly he said he has got an open door policy, and then he improved it because he thought that was not enough. He said, in fact, he removed the door. There's no door. So they have things that they say, but as you are saying, I think it is us who need this. And don't think about Kudzai, don't think about Koliu, don't think even about Pelagia. Community radios are owned by communities. So it is the communities that must fight for those rights, for licensing, and for the operating space. Thank you very much. Now we are going to have refreshments, and as we share more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Okay, outside the country.